Richard, Virat Kohli at that point in time in 2008 wasn't the Virat Kohli that we know now. Uh, can you give me some, okay, let's kind of change it in a manner that the way you buy someone and then that guy becomes one of the greatest players to have played the sport, Virat Kohli. Any story that you want to share from that particular auction?
Well, of course, Virat Kohli never came under my hammer. I mean, there are two of the greatest players in the history of Indian.
That kind of was my question. That the Tendulkar story and the Kohli story, the two of the greatest, perhaps who never came under your hammer. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, people have said to me, do I have any regrets about conducting the IPL auctions for 10 years? And I said, I've only got great memories. And I've been very, very lucky to have raised my gavel and dropped my gavel on the world's best cricketers. Of course, there are two names that come to mind, two players who never came up for sale, Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli, for differing reasons. I was told when I was first briefed in London in 2007 that Sachin Tendulkar will not be in the auction. As you know, there were a number of players, Mark, who were icon players, and they were it was already decided with whom they would be associated. So there was
just to interrupt. Lalit Modi and I, and by the way, I've written the book Maverick Commissioner. So Lalit and I were having a chat, and I said, "Why did you not auction Sachin?" And he said, "Look, we had a debate on this, not one but many." And a lot of people came and told me, "Sachin is God. You don't auction God. In India, it could just hurt sentiments. That you can't auction God." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, trust me. We had a debate. Should we put everyone else, but not Sachin, because Sachin's God?" That's when we came up with this concept of icon player. Anyway, back to you.
Oh, okay. Well, how interesting. I understand that there was, these things were talked about. Lalit Modi would explore all possibilities. Maybe he was concerned that perhaps people would blow all their entire purse on one player, and we'd have to have some form of right to match at the end of the first auction. But it was So it would have been fascinating to have put players like Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli under the hammer. Now there is a purse that each team has, and it would have been fascinating to have known how far any of those franchises would have gone. I mean, in IPL 1, it would have been how much more than MS Dhoni would Sachin Tendulkar have made, and how much of the purse would the Mumbai franchise have blown to secure the services of Sachin. It's hypothetical, but I could certainly say that if I had auctioned either of them, I would have held the record for the highest price ever paid in the history of IPL for any player. But it's all hypothetical. I can look back at on the players that I have auctioned, and people say to me very quickly after the auction, were you surprised that one player made a high price, and were you disappointed that perhaps a player remained unsold? And you must remember that fortunes are made and lost in the IPL auction. It's a pretty brutal affair. Some players make off in fortunes, and other players remain unsold. It's a very transparent process. So I do say that I try not to dwell at the time on a player selling for a high price, a low price, or not selling at all. The auctioneer, as Malika and Hugh and Charu as well, will tell you should not show too much emotion. You're there to do a job. You shouldn't be dwelling on what ifs or gosh, that was a high price, because you've got to focus on the next bid. And as your hammer comes down, you move on to the next player. If you started reflecting too much on, my goodness, I didn't think that was going to happen, you'd lose your train of thought for the next player. It's only after the auction finishes and you go back and you sit down and you reflect on your auctioneer's book, you can think, gosh, that really was quite a surprising price. But of course, by that time, the journalists and the teams and the players themselves have already made their comments.